and welcome to my channel, My Sister Says. Today I'm talking all about sleep training. Sleep training has changed my life, literally has allowed me to live, so I wanted to tell you all about it today. So today I'm going to be talking about what sleep training is, why it is so awesome. I'm going to give you my 5 steps to sleep train, and then at the end I'm going to talk about some little bonus things like what to do if you're breastfeeding while sleep training, what to do if your kid is older, and some other things like that. So obviously I am a mom. I've talked about that before. I have a little girl who's actually almost 1 now, and sleep training has continued to be super important for us. We sleep trained our baby when she was 4 months old and have continued to have to kind of re-sleep train throughout her life as different things have changed, but it has been so awesome and I've loved it so much, so I wanted to tell you about it. On my channel, I love to share tips for new moms and moms to be and how to live a healthy, happy lifestyle on a budget, and I am excited to tell you all about sleep training today. So let's get started. So first of all, what is sleep training? Sleep training basically means you're training your child and teaching them how to fall asleep on their own. There are many different methods for sleep training. I did a lot of research when I was wanting to sleep train my baby. I even started learning about it when I was pregnant so that I would be ready. And there are a lot of methods, but essentially, and you may disagree with this, but from what I found, basically every method was cried out to some extent. Whether you are sitting right by your baby and then like you slowly move the chair away, or you check on them at certain times and different things like that. But in the end, your baby is gonna have to cry because it's an adjustment for them and they need to figure it out on their own. So that's basically what sleep training it is. It's some form of teaching your baby to sleep through the night or even just sleep with naps, and they are doing it by themselves. So today, my method that I'm talking about is a cry it out method, but I think it's one you're gonna like. I don't think is horrible to your child, and I think it will really help. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is why sleep training is important. There's been a lot of studies that have shown that sleep training your child when they're young and learning to fall asleep on your own affects them for the rest of their life. If you never learn how to fall asleep on your own, I feel like some of us as adults still have a hard time learning to fall asleep. And what I mean by falling asleep on your own is they don't need to be rocked to sleep or fed to sleep or have even a binky. They can just do it by themselves, which is such an important skill to have throughout your whole babyhood and childhood and adulthood. So that's why it's important. Another reason it's important, obviously, as parents, is that you get to get more sleep and you don't have to be waking up tons of times during the night to help your child. They can just sleep on their own. So now I'm going to tell you how to get to that point, how to do it. Step number 1 is that you need to commit. If your baby is doing fine, if you are okay with them getting up in the night, or maybe whatever you have going is working, that's fine. You do not have to sleep train. But if you want to, you need to really want to, because it can be really hard. It's sad. Your baby is going to cry. And if you're not quite ready for that emotionally, that's okay. Wait till you are. But if you are, then you need to really commit, and you also need to commit some time to do this. The best results come from when you set aside a couple of days at least about 72 hours is what most experts say, just to hunker down and get the routine for your baby. And in this time that you're going to commit, this weekend or even up to a week if you can, would be awesome. You're not going to want to put them in a stroller, in a car seat, like driving on a car ride, because those things help soothe your baby to sleep, and what you're trying to do is help them to do it by themselves. So you want to completely eliminate that. Just stay home, stick to your schedule, and help them sleep. Now, right now is kind of a crazy time when I'm filming this, when all of this coronavirus stuff is going on and we've actually been told to stay at home and self-isolate or self-quarantine. So if you've been wanting to sleep train your baby, now would be a great time because you're home anyway. So, step number 2, after you've committed yourself to do it, is to decide if your baby is ready. Now, there are a lot of things that can help decide if your baby is ready. I'm going to give you some suggestions, but the number one rule is that you're going to want to make sure everything is okay with your pediatrician. Just run all of this by them and see if they think that your baby is ready to sleep train. The first rule of thumb, and this is a suggestion by a professional sleep trainer, is to wait until your baby is at least 16 weeks old by their due date. So that means if your baby was born really prematurely, or maybe you had twins that were born early, you would want to count their 16 weeks from your expected due date. This is because around that time is when their hormones start to regulate, their melatonin starts to regulate, and their body is physically capable of sleeping for longer stretches of time. So you'd want to wait till then. Another thing that is really important is to make sure your baby can roll over comfortably, because around this time is when babies start rolling over, and if they haven't quite figured out yet, it could be a cause for concern that maybe they can flip over but they don't know how to flip back, and maybe they wouldn't be able to breathe or something going on. So I would wait until they can roll over on both sides and they can do it pretty comfortably. You'll want to talk to your pediatrician about this, but most of the time, if they can roll over really well, they can roll on their belly and they stay there asleep, it's usually just fine. You don't want to go and wake them up. But if your pediatrician says to, then that's fine too. So you'll want to double check with them. For us, my baby started rolling over at 2 to 3 months. She was pretty early. And so by the time we sleep trained her about 4.5 months, she was totally comfortable with that, and she loved sleeping on her belly. Actually, she always sleeps on her tummy. But we knew that if she felt like she couldn't breathe or something, she was able to flip herself back, and so that was good to go. Another thing that can be an indicator or something that can help you know if your baby is ready to sleep train is if they're starting to eat solids, which most babies between 4 and 6 months will start eating at least a little bit of rice cereal or some other solids, and this can help them sustain longer through the night. I wouldn't say that this is like necessary to sleep train, but it definitely helps because they can sleep a little bit longer. Another thing that I will say is when we asked our doctor, he told us that babies are physically capable of sleeping through the night at 6 weeks old, and our baby was healthy and happy, and so he said she was totally ready to sleep train at 4 months. He said there would be no problem with that. But like I said, double check with your doctor. Step number 3 is to get all of your equipment or supplies that you're going to need. Now, when I was pregnant and when our baby was first born, my husband and I were like, we're not going to do sound machines. We're just going to let our baby sleep during the daylight so they just get used to that so we don't have to accommodate everything for our baby. But we finally surrendered and realized that doing those things really help. So some of the things that you're going to want to make sure you have to do sleep training is first to have a sound machine. I talked about this in my Newborn Essentials video about the importance of sound machines. Ours was just one from Amazon. I'll link it below, and it works great and we really like it. So get some kind of a sound machine. Another thing you're going to want is blackout curtains. And like I said, we wouldn't want to do this at first, but it really helps a lot. We have blinds, and then we got some blackout curtains, and it just makes it nice and dark in the room. The reason why you want to do this is because, especially as a newborn, they really have night and day confused, and it's hard for them to know when to sleep if it's still light outside. So while it's daytime, while it's playtime, keep the lights on, keep it noisy and fun, and then when it's time to sleep, you're going to want to have a very nice dark place where they know, it tells their brain, okay, it's time to sleep now, it's dark. So that's why you want to get that. Another thing you're going to need is some way to monitor your baby through this whole experience for your own sake and for the safety of your baby. So we love our Wyze Cam. I talk about this in depth in my Newborn Essential Bonuses video, so you can check that out. But it is an awesome and very inexpensive baby monitor that's actually not a baby monitor, that we use as one that you can look at the video on your phone. It gives notifications for sound and motion, and it is just the best. It's super high quality video and we love it. So I'll link that below as well, but you're going to want to have some way of monitoring sound. Like a sound monitor is great, but if you can have a video monitor, that's even better, because then you can see if maybe their leg is stuck in between your crib poles, or if they rolled over, or they need some help, or something else is going on, and then you can know if you need to go in and help them out. And the last thing you're going to need is obviously a crib. Sleep training really only works if the baby is in their own space. So we actually started sleep training our baby in our closet. We have a very large walk-in closet with no windows. And so we started sleep training her in there, just because of so different circumstances that the nursery wasn't available. And it was great, and we were able to sleep train her there, and then we transitioned into the crib. But it still needs to be a separate space, not in your own room. Step number 4 is to establish a routine and be consistent. So you've probably heard of the importance of having a consistent nighttime routine, but for sleep training, you're going to want to kind of do the same routine for nighttime and nap time, so that it really signals to your baby, okay, it's time for me to sleep now. So what we do in our family is I would feed her downstairs. I am actually bottle feeding her now, but I was breastfeeding her for the first 9 months. So I would feed her, and then we would go upstairs and change her diaper. Now we also brush her teeth because she has 2 little teeth, and we turn on the sound machine, and then we read a book, and then we put her down in her bed, and it's nice and dark. And we tell her that we love her and good night. So that's kind of what we do. You can do any type of routine. For a while, we did a bath every single night just to help signal to her that it was time to go to sleep. That really helped when we were sleep training. We don't do that now. We do it every couple of days, but that is a really good tip because it really signals to your baby that it's time to go to bed. Being consistent while doing all of this is really important, especially with their bedtime. That really helps. And also with nap times, if you can, just to help them know what to expect. And it can be really hard if you have other plans or other things going on. But I would say, especially for like your first couple weeks to a month of sleep training, try the best you can to keep it consistent, because that is what will really help just really nail down the sleep training that you're trying to do. Step number 5 is to actually sleep train them and to help them to cry it out. So what we do, and this was a system that I learned from a professional sleep trainer. I actually watched some videos on YouTube. I'll link them below because I thought they were really helpful for me. But what you would do is you do your whole routine, and then what she suggests is to get your baby to a sleep level of a 5. So if 1 is completely awake and playing around and 10 is knocked out dead asleep, you want to get your baby to about a 5 of sleepiness before you lay them down. So what she suggests doing is, after you've done your routine, the lights are out, the sound machine is on, then you're going to want to hold your baby, not rock them around or sing to them or bounce them, but just hold your baby nice and close for up to 5 minutes until you feel like they're starting to, rub their eyes, or they're starting to get a little bit sleepy. You don't want to go any longer than 5 minutes though, so even after 5 minutes, they're still flailing around. You're just going to have to lay them down. And then you're going to lay them down in their crib, and this is the hardest part, without any binky or stuffed animal or anything. It's just them and their crib in probably a sleep sack to keep them warm. We now give our baby a blanket just because she's older and she's fine handling that, but you're going to want to start probably with a sleep sack if they're younger. You lay them down on their back, not on their belly. That's very important. Even if they're going to roll to their belly anyway, you need to lay them down on their back and tell them that you love them and walk out. And that is really hard to just walk out because they're probably going to cry, but this is how it works, and it's going to be okay. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Now, she says that after 10 to 20 minutes, if your baby is consistently crying, you can go in and check on them. We found, though, that I'm sure you will find as well, that when you go back in, your baby just freaks out even more. So we actually usually didn't go in unless we heard that we felt like something was actually wrong, or we saw on the camera that she had a leg stuck between the rails of the crib, and then we would go in and fix that. But as a parent, you can tell when they really there's something wrong or if they're just upset. And when they're first sleep training, they're probably going to cry more and more and get a little bit more intense to see at what point you're going to cave and go in, but try your very hardest not to cave. So when you're first sleep training, you want them to cry it out for up to an hour of consistent crying. I know that sounds horrible and like you're torturing your baby, but I promise you they're going to be okay and they don't think that you're abandoning them. They're just expressing their feelings because crying is the only way that they can do that, and it will help them in the long term. The first time we did this, it was definitely hard and she cried a lot, but she only cried for I think 30 minutes or maybe 40 was the longest that she ever cried for, and then she would fall asleep. But there was actually one time where she cried the entire hour. And what the sleep trainer suggested to do if they cry for the entire hour is to pick them up, take them out of their room, and you're going to want to just bring them to the bright sunlight, open the blinds, turn on music or whatever to show them that it's time to be awake. Because once you come into the room, they're going to want, oh, now mommy can hold me and get me back to sleep. But they need to figure it out on their own. So you're going to bring them out here for 30 minutes, and they're probably going to be very unhappy, but we're going to want to keep them out here for 30 minutes and then, signaling, okay, the nap is over now, and then go back and try again with the nap, or going to sleep, because then at this point they will probably be easier for them to go to sleep, but that is kind of the schedule that she suggests to do. And I know it sounds horrible to let them cry so much, and it is hard as a parent. I totally agree with you, and I've been through that, but it will be worth it. It took us a couple of days with Eden, our little girl, probably 2 nights maybe, and then it was like magic. It just worked. My parents couldn't believe how well she went down. We could just put her down, and it was awesome. So as time progresses and there's different things that change in your baby's life, like they start eating more, or maybe they have a lot of acid reflux, or maybe they start teething, or they get sick. All of these things could cause a disruption in their sleeping or their sleep training. And that's okay. You just have to do it again. Or if you go traveling or you move and things change, all those things are changes, but the solution is the same. You just do the same routine of your sleep training. You do your routine, you make sure you have all the equipment you need, and you do the sleep training, cry it out again. And we've had to do this multiple times through Eden's life so far. We actually were just out of town for about a week staying at my parents', and our baby was in a crib in our room. And she figured that out and actually slept in our bed for the first time since she was 4 months old. She's 11 months old now. And when we came back, we had to sleep train her again. But it's not as hard all of the other times, but it is something you're going to have to do over and over again. Just let them cry it out and they will be okay. Another thing is that when your baby gets older and they're able to just put the binky back into their mouth by themselves, then you can totally let them have a binky at night. We let her have one like every night now. And if she's getting really sad, she'll just put the binky in and everything is fine. But the reason you don't want to give it to them earlier is because obviously if the binky falls out and they're reliant on sucking on their binky to fall asleep, you're going to have to go in every time their binky falls out and put it back in their mouth for them. So that's why you want to stay away from giving them that. So as promised, I'm going to talk about breastfeeding with sleep training and what to do if your baby's older. So the breastfeeding situation was a little bit tricky for me to figure out at first of how to do that with sleep training. But once I figured it out, it worked super well. So now that my baby is bottle fed, she can sleep for longer stretches, but my baby couldn't when she was breastfed. She was also younger. But the other thing is I had to nurse during the night or I felt like I was going to explode because I had so much milk production. So what I found that helped the very best is you don't want to feed your baby every time they wake up crying, because then they're going to get accustomed to, okay, if I cry, then my mom will feed me and soothe me back to sleep. Most of the time though, your baby is not actually hungry. It's just the way that they get soothed is through feeding. So what I did is I would feed her before I put her down. at, let's say, 7:30 or 8 or whatever time, or 7 that I put her down. It changed as she got older. So I'd feed her, put her down, and then I would feed her before I went to bed, which was usually around 10:30 or maybe 11. And then I would set an alarm to feed her at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning. It kind of changed. But what you want to do is you want to feed them before they would wake up to cry. So I would go in, feed her, kind of do like a dream feed where she was just basically asleep the whole feeding, then put her back down and go to bed. And then if she woke up at 5 in the morning crying, I knew, okay, she's not crying because she's hungry. She's just crying and needs to cry it out. And eventually she was able to just sleep all the way through the night with that feeding at 10 and the or 10:30 and the feeding at 4. And it was really awesome because it wasn't as big of a deal for me to just get up really quick and feed her. And I did that for a long time just because I didn't want to lose my supply, and it was also painful if I let her go that long without feeding. But it worked out really well. And I did that all the way until we switched to formula feeding because she self-weaned and I got sick, and it's a long story, but we switched to formula feeding, and then at that point she just slept completely through the night, and it has been really awesome. So I hope that this sleep training works for you too. Let me know if it works or if you have any questions. I probably didn't cover everything in this video, but I tried my very best, and I will see you next time for another video. Bye!